Hazardous. Meet Leo. Leo isn't doing so well. Leo hasn't been doing so well for a while now. His breathing is rough, his vision is all but gone. All he can go by is the source of heat in front of him and the irresistible urge to pursue that heat. Because every cell of him feels cold and starving. It's a starvation that is painful. All it does is drive Leo to take another blind step forward, one foot after another, slowly catching up with the feeling of heat. According to his hazy memories, it's all he's ever wanted. He just knew that if he could get his hand, nay, a pinky, onto that heat, everything would be better. He would be alright, and that things would get better. Things wouldn't get better. Leo is but one of the many victims of the Hazardous event. One day, a nuclear reactor failed in Chernobyl, Russia. After years of mismanagement and falsified reports, a crucial part failed. Things came to a head, and the reactor suffered a catastrophic meltdown, spewing radiation everywhere in the area. It left the area uninhabitable by humans for decades, and even to this day, people should take care in the exclusion zone. Leo was one of the unfortunate ones. He didn't die instantly, nor did he die slowly. Leo, being a technician, was at ground zero. And while many people died of radiation poisoning or cancer much later, Leo and a small group of his co-workers were mutated. Seared shut into their faulty hazmat suits, Leo and company slowly started dissolving, melting into a radioactive slime-like creature. Sight and hearing were the first things to go, as the required organs melted and combined with the ooze that was Leo's new body. Brain damage from the energy discharge also removed many of Leo's higher thought functions and memories. Things like his wife's name, his son's birthday, and even how old Leo was. It was all wiped away, slowly replaced with a single desire. But by this point, Leo could no longer be considered human. His body was still mutating. The slime that was trapped in the hazmat suit fed off of thermal energy. Constantly cooling like lava exposed to water, Leo's new body was at a constant risk of cooling into a brown statue if he didn't stay hot. It had already happened to several of his mutated co-workers. They had either failed to find heat quickly enough, or their suit was damaged enough that they could no longer animate it anymore, and spilled out everywhere in a bright green, glowing, toxic mess. A mess that poisoned the surroundings for a long time. So what little remained of Leo's survival instincts made him move forward towards the source of heat, taking it from everywhere and in any way he could. He approached a wandering deer, one that was already sick from exposure to radiation from the nearby reactor. It was too ill to run from the approaching humanoid-shaped sludge. All it could do was stumble in the opposite direction, growing weaker and weaker. That weakness allowed Leo to catch that deer, to finally touch it. When he did so, the most wonderful feeling of bliss lit up every remaining neuron that composed Leo's melting, mutated brain. It was paradise that he was no longer cold. He didn't notice the deer stiffen up and freeze over in an instant, as every joule of energy from the deer was absorbed into his body. First, it snap-froze as though dipped in liquid nitrogen, then it shattered into dust as even more energy was consumed. As the energy was taken, Leo didn't notice the slime that now composed his body getting brighter. What he did notice was that the heat near him vanished and he was starting to feel the creeping cold again. Desperately, he searched around him, and in the distance, he sensed another source of heat. Relieved, Leo started to move towards that high, not noticing that he was poisoning the air and the earth with every step he took. He also couldn't know that at the same time, several of his co-workers who had been similarly mutated were doing similar things all around the area, stealing the energy of any biological creature they could find and using it to keep themselves functioning. They too were making the surrounding area more and more hazardous with every step they took. That they were stepping away from the broken down power plant meant that they were eventually going to put other people in danger, making the damage worse as they spread out, risking more people becoming like them. No, all that Leo and his like creatures wanted was heat. Terrifying as it is, for every one that succumbed to the chill and hardened like rock, there was one who was getting brighter and brighter. Worse still, they were stabilizing. The fuel they consumed was allowing their bodies to start to support themselves, starting to produce their own heat, transforming a one-off tragedy into something like a constant volcanic eruption. The victims knew none of this, of course. By this point, if they hadn't died, their original personalities were long gone, leaving nothing but a man-made disaster that is a living nuclear slime. If you were to ask Leo what his name was, he wouldn't even be able to understand you. He would just see your body heat and want it for himself. To get that little bit brighter, that little bit hotter. Then he would try to touch you, and if you were lucky, you would put as many cold sources between you and Leo as possible. Do that, and hope he loses your heat signature and goes after another one. It would be hard to do that, as with the more Leo and his fellow Hazardous fed, the hotter they got, the further they could sense heat. And once a certain temperature is reached, even water will burn, and walls will fail to block them. By the time a reactive force arrived to put Leo and the other few survivors down, they had taken more than enough heat to stabilize. But the desire to consume more never vanished. It was their only desire, their only yearning. Puncturing the suit failed because sharp objects would melt the instant the weapon got too close. It was disheartening to see bullets evaporate from extreme heat. Getting close wasn't an option either, as Leo could move surprisingly fast. Plus, the radiation suits needed to survive being in their presence were very bulky, and anything that slowed a person down risked putting them within grabbing range. But using living decoys, all the Hazardous were lured back to the reactor and sealed off. Each of the decoys died from radiation poisoning, of course. Research into a solution continues, but for now, the answer is to seal them up tightly and hope they burn themselves out before they melt their way out.